You know that feeling, just life coming at you from all angles.
Oh,
Your
definitely.
phone's buzzing, social media is just this endless scroll. Maybe you're reaching for, I don't know, comfort food without even thinking.
Yeah, this constant stream of stimulation, it's a lot.
It really is. Ever wish you could just hit a pause button on all of that? Find some focus again.
That feeling of being overwhelmed is so common now, and it's led to some interesting ideas about how to cope.
Like this dopamine detox thing
Yeah,
or dopamine fast.
exactly. That's one idea that's been getting a lot of attention lately.
Right. You hear about people cutting out things they enjoy, social media, certain foods, sometimes even limiting conversations,
Hmm.
all hoping to somehow like reset their brain.
Yeah, that's the narrative.
So in this deep dive, we're going to look closely at what this trend is actually about. What does the science really say about dopamine?
Yeah.
And, can you even detox from it?
And the big question, if you're feeling overwhelmed, could this actually help?
Yeah. We've looked into what the experts are saying to try and get a clearer picture for everyone, because it sounds appealing, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
This idea that cutting back on pleasures could make you more motivated, more focused, like hitting a reset button.
It definitely has that quick fix appeal. But let's dig into what people actually mean when they say dopamine detox. What does it look like?
Well, it seems like the definition is kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, it's not super clear cut.
I've heard people talk about cutting out, like, everything. Eating, talking, internet, TV, games.
Even substances like caffeine or alcohol sometimes.
Right. The general idea seems to be avoid enjoyable things to lower your dopamine, somehow.
That's definitely one popular interpretation. But what's really interesting is that the psychologist often credited with popularizing the term, Cameron Sepa,
Yeah.
he actually had a different concept in mind. He said his dopamine fast isn't really about reducing dopamine levels at all.
Oh. So what was it about then?
He saw it more as a tool based on principles from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT,
CBT.
to help people manage compulsive behaviors. He even apparently admitted the name dopamine fast was just, a catchy label, not meant literally.
So his original thing wasn't some kind of brain cleanse.
Not really, no. SIPA's method, using CBT ideas, was focused on helping people become less dependent on everyday triggers.
Like phone notifications,
Ah,
social media alerts.
exactly, things that prompt impulsive actions. But the popular understanding sort of ran with this idea of physically reducing dopamine in the brain.
What sort of compulsive behaviors was he aiming at with this technique?
He listed quite a few things, like emotional eating, spending way too much time online or gaming,
Uh-huh.
problems with gambling or shopping, compulsive porn use or masturbation, always chasing thrills or novelty,
Right.
and using recreational drugs. The goal of these fasts, which could be just hours or maybe a few days, was to step back from those triggers.
And hopefully develop more intentional habits instead.
Precisely. Less impulsive, more deliberate choices.
Okay, so that's the trend in its varied interpretations. But let's get to the science bit. What exactly is dopamine? We hear the word constantly.
Yeah, it's thrown around a lot.
What does it actually do in our brains?
That's such a crucial question. So, dopamine is a neurotransmitter, basically, a chemical messenger in the brain. And yes, it is involved in how we experience pleasure.
Okay, so that part's true.
It plays a role, yes, but its job is much, much broader than just pleasure. It's involved in so many things.
Like what?
Learning, motivation, how we process rewards, our sleep cycles, mood, even attention and focus. It's a real multitasker.
So definitely not just the pleasure chemical then.
Exactly. That's way too simplistic. For instance, scientists know dopamine is really key in something called reward prediction error.
Reward prediction error. What's that?
It's basically the difference between what you expect to get as a reward and what you actually get.
Oh, okay.
Dopamine helps your brain register that difference, learn from it, and adjust expectations for the future. It's crucial for learning. And it's also involved in motivational salience, which sounds complex, but it's basically what makes certain things stand out, grab your attention, and drive you to act.
Whether they're good for you or not.
Right. It makes things seem important and motivates you to go after them or maybe avoid them. So it's much more about anticipation, motivation, wanting, learning, not just the pleasure itself.
That's a much bigger picture.
Yeah,
So it's about the drive and the expectation too.
precisely. And another really important point, dopamine doesn't work in a vacuum.
Meaning.
It's constantly interacting with other neurotransmitters, other brain circuits. Many behaviors we link just to dopamine actually involve this complex interplay. Think of it like an orchestra. Dopamine is one instrument, maybe a loud one sometimes, but it's the whole orchestra playing together that makes the music.
Got it. So what about that idea then, that dopamine builds up and we need a break, a detox? Does that hold water scientifically?
Not really. That's a common misconception, but it doesn't quite match how neuroscientists understand dopamine.
How does it work then?
Our brains are constantly producing and releasing dopamine as needed. It's synthesized, used, broken down, recycled. It's a dynamic process. It doesn't just pile up somewhere waiting to be flushed out by taking a break from Netflix.
So you can't just like stockpile it or deplete it easily.
Well, you certainly can't deplete it completely. Trying to shut down all dopamine activity, that would be impossible in a healthy person and would signify a really serious medical condition like advanced Parkinson's disease. It's vital for basic functions, even movement.
Okay. Wow. So putting all that together, does dopamine fasting, as it's usually advertised, actually work? Does it reset dopamine levels?
Based on the current scientific evidence, the answer seems to be no.
No.
There's no substantial proof that just avoiding enjoyable activities literally resets dopamine levels or performs a detox in the brain.
So when you see stuff online claiming it rewires your brain by lowering dopamine, probably not accurate.
That's the consensus among neuroscientists, yes. Any benefits people do feel, and some people report feeling better, are likely due to other factors.
Like what?
Most likely is the simple act of abstaining from potentially problematic or habit-forming activities. It's a behavioral change, not really a direct chemical one on the dopamine system itself.
But what about those people who swear by it? They say they feel more focused, less overwhelmed after a fast.
And we should acknowledge those experiences. People do report feeling better focus, less stress, fewer impulsive urges. There was even a review in 2024 that noted these potential benefits from dopamine fasting-like ideologies. But importantly, that same review also warned about potential negative effects from the more extreme versions.
Like what kind of negative effects?
Things like increased anxiety, potential malnutrition if fasting involves severe food restriction, and social isolation or loneliness.
Okay, so benefits might be real for some, but the reason isn't actually a dopamine detox.
That seems to be the most accurate picture, yes. Experts do get concerned that the trend misrepresents neuroscience.
And could even be harmful.
Potentially, yeah. If people start trying to manipulate their dopamine in non-behavioral ways, like with unproven supplements or extreme diets, without really understanding the system, it could have unintended consequences.
That makes sense. Okay, but if it's not a dopamine detox, why might taking a break from all that constant stimulation actually feel good or be helpful for some people?
Now that's where the potential incidental benefits come in. Taking intentional breaks from things like, doom scrolling.
We've all been there.
Right. Or binge watching shows for hours, or just the constant barrage of digital input. That can be really helpful.
How so? What might people notice?
Well, you might genuinely find it easier to focus afterwards. Your thinking might feel clearer, maybe you feel more present, more mindful.
Less scattered.
Exactly. It can also free up significant chunks of time. Time you were spending on those activities can now go towards something more productive or restful or meaningful. It reduces the constant distraction factor.
And you mentioned habits earlier.
Yes. There's a connection there too. Many of these activities are linked to cues. Your phone buzzes, you check it, you sit on the couch, you turn on the TV. By reducing exposure to those cues.
You weaken the automatic response.
Precisely. It's like basic conditioning. Fewer triggers means fewer automatic, potentially unwanted actions. Taking a break can help disrupt those patterns.
Okay, and you also said the psychologist who kind of started this, SEPA, based it on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes. That's a really key point that often gets lost. His original concept was rooted in CBT principles. Specifically a technique called exposure and response prevention, or ERP.
Exposure and response prevention.
Yeah.
What does that involve?
The core idea is you deliberately expose yourself to the trigger, the thing that makes you want to do the compulsive behavior.
Okay.
But you don't engage the behavior. You sit with the urge, the discomfort, without giving in.
So it's about building tolerance for that urge, learning to ride it out.
Exactly. Over time, it can lessen the habit's power over you. It's a well-established technique for things like OCD, for example.
Interesting. So there are other, maybe more established ways to improve self-control and focus.
Oh, absolutely. Things like mindfulness practices, meditation, brief motivational interventions, even Techniques like contingency management, where you might use rewards for positive behavior changes, these are all evidence-based behavioral approaches.
This conversation also makes me think about how our devices, our apps, are designed. It feels like they want us hooked sometimes.
You're absolutely right. That's why this idea of mindful technology use has become so important.
Mindful technology use, like just being aware.
Being aware is the first step, yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing what you're doing with technology and, crucially, why you're doing it. So many apps use design features specifically to be habit forming.
Like those red notification badges. They always get
They
me.
create that sense of urgency, or endless scrolling, which keeps you engaged passively for ages, or content that disappears, like stories playing on FOMO, fear of missing out.
So just knowing they're doing that helps.
It can, yeah. Mindful tech use means consciously interacting, not just reacting to these engineered prompts.
What are some practical tips then?
Well, things like avoiding screens right before bed. The blue light messes with sleep. Maybe keeping your phone physically away from you when you need to focus. Setting time limits on specific apps you tend to overuse.
Most phones have tools for that now, right?
They do. Screen time management tools, grayscale modes, notification controls. Using those intentionally can make a big difference.
Okay, so maybe instead of a dramatic all-or-nothing detox, focusing on these smaller, more sustainable changes to our habits might be a better long-term strategy.
I think that's a really insightful way to put it. Understanding the psychology of habit formation is incredibly powerful for making lasting change.
How do habits actually form? Remind us.
Essentially, habits are automatic responses linked to specific cues or contexts. They develop through repetition. You do something in response to a cue, maybe get a small reward, and your brain starts automating that link.
So the key is creating positive, automatic links.
Pretty much. Identify a simple action linked to a goal you have. Repeat it consistently in the same context, like maybe doing 5 push-ups right after you brush your teeth. Track your progress.
And building new good habits is easier than breaking bad ones.
Research generally suggests focusing on forming new healthy habits is often more effective, yeah. And start small. Really small, manageable changes are key. Don't expect miracles overnight. It can take, on average, maybe around 10 weeks for a new daily habit to feel automatic. Be patient.
This all sounds much more grounded, less like a magic bullet, but
Mhm.
when do these kinds of issues, maybe compulsive internet use or overeating, become something more serious, something needing professional help?
That's a really critical distinction to make. Taking breaks and building habits is great for general well-being, but
Uh.
dopamine fasting, as is popularly understood, is absolutely not a scientifically proven treatment for actual addiction or serious mental health disorders.
Okay, important clarification.
If someone is really struggling with, say, a substance use disorder or severe compulsive behaviors like gambling that's ruining their finances, or internet use that's stopping them from working or maintaining relationships,
Yeah.
they really need to seek help from qualified professionals, healthcare providers, therapists specializing in addiction or behavioral issues.
So it's definitely not a DIY cure for deep-seated problems.
Absolutely not. Those situations require proper diagnosis and evidence-based treatments. Trying to detox your way out of a serious addiction isn't likely to work and could even delay getting effective help.
Okay, that's very clear. So let's try and sum up this deep dive then. What are the main takeaways about the dopamine detox trend?
I think the biggest thing is the popular idea of a dopamine detox is largely a misnomer. It doesn't literally detox or reset your dopamine levels in the way people often think.
Right, but taking breaks can still be good.
Yes, intentionally stepping back from overstimulating activities can definitely have benefits for focus, mental clarity, and impulse control. But those benefits are almost certainly coming from behavioral changes.
Not from fiddling with brain chemistry directly.
Exactly. It's about changing your relationship with the stimuli, not changing the fundamental neurochemistry through simple abstinence.
And the science just underscores how complex dopamine actually is and how our brains work in general. It's not simple.
Not at all. Dopamine does so much more than just signal pleasure. And the brain is this incredibly intricate network. So maybe instead of chasing a dopamine detox,
Yeah.
it might be more fruitful to focus on, like we discussed, more mindful technology use and intentionally building healthier habits using principles we know actually work from psychology and behavioral science. That's likely to give more sustainable results.
That really does make a lot more sense. Okay, so here's a final thought to leave everyone with. Maybe take a moment to consider the real reasons behind why you reach for those high dopamine activities so often.
Interesting question.
Are they genuinely bringing you fulfillment and joy? Or are they sometimes maybe.
Yeah.
A way to escape boredom or avoid uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, exploring that, your underlying motivations, might actually be a much more valuable deep dive than any quick fix detox.
Definitely something to think about. Maybe check out some resources on mindful living or the science of habit formation. It could lead to more meaningful changes in the long run.